The wind howled like a wild animal outside his hut. Snow slammed against the wooden walls, loud enough to wake the dead. The man Eli sat near the fireplace, rubbing his hands together. The fire cracked, but it was barely enough to fight the cold. He lived alone on this icy moon, far from Earth. It had been months since he last saw a face, let alone spoke to anyone. His hut was simple: one bed, one stove, and walls packed with old stories and silence. Then he heard it, a faint sound. Scratching, like something or someone was at his door. Eli froze. No one should be out in this blizzard. Not a human. Not even the wild creatures could survive this kind of cold. He grabbed his old rifle from the wall, just in case. Quietly, he stepped to the door. The scratching came again, slow, weak, desperate. He opened the door. A blast of freezing wind hit him like a punch. But what shocked him wasn't the cold, it was what he saw. A figure collapsed in the snow, thin, shaking, barefoot, skin pale blue, eyes wide with fear. It was a woman, an alien woman. Her hair was long and silver, now tangled and frozen. Her body was wrapped in torn cloth, not warm enough for this weather. She looked up at him, and that's when Eli saw it. She was terrified of him. Her eyes went wide. She tried to crawl backward, but her limbs failed. She made a sound like a whimper, like a creature caught in a trap. She reached out blindly, like she'd rather crawl into the snow than face him. "Hey, no," Eli said, kneeling down. "I'm not going to hurt you." Of course she didn't understand. She didn't speak his language. She kept whispering something in her tongue, voice trembling. Eli had no choice. She'd die if he left her out here. He lifted her gently. She was so light, too light. She barely weighed more than the blanket he wrapped her in. She trembled in his arms, her hands gripping the cloth tightly like she expected pain. He closed the door, locking out the wind, and laid her near the fire. The warmth should have comforted her, but instead, she flinched. Every time he moved, she watched him like a cornered animal. Her breathing was fast. Her hands stayed close to her chest. She didn't speak again, just looked at him like he was death itself. Eli stepped back, giving her space. He placed a bowl of hot broth near her and pointed. "Eat. You need it." She didn't touch it. She just stared at the fire, whispering something again. He caught one word: human. That's when it clicked. She was running from humans. Eli felt his heart tighten. What had happened to her before she found his door? Who had hurt her? Why was she more scared of him than the storm? That night, he didn't sleep. He sat in the corner watching her breathe. She was so cold. Her hands were blue. Her body shook. Every few minutes, like the cold still had its claws in her bones. Then she started to cry. Soft, quiet, but painful. She turned her face away, but Eli could hear her. Words he didn't understand. A sob now and then. And something else begging. "Please, no more cages, please." Eli didn't speak. He just listened. And when she finally fell asleep, curled into herself like a child, he placed another log on the fire and whispered, "You're safe now." He didn't know if that was true. He didn't know who she was, or what she was running from, but the storm had brought her to his door for a reason, and he had a feeling this was just the beginning. The fire burned steady, but the fear in her eyes never faded. Eli kept his distance. He moved slow, careful not to startle her. Every sound, the creak of the wooden floor, the whisper of wind outside, made her tense. Like a hunted animal, she sat near the fire, wrapped in 2 thick blankets. But her hands still trembled. Her eyes followed him everywhere. When he stood, she leaned back. When he reached for something, she flinched. Eli had seen fear before on the battlefield, in disaster zones. But this was different. This fear came from deep inside her soul. He placed a small wooden cup near her, filled with warm water and a drop of honey. She didn't move. "You need to drink something," he said gently. She didn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. She looked at him, then at the cup. Slowly she reached out, then her finger stopped inches away. Her hand froze mid-air because he had taken a step closer, and suddenly, without warning, she knocked the cup over and screamed a short, broken cry, then backed into the corner of the hut like she was expecting to be struck. Eli froze. His heart ached. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, holding his hands up. She stared at him with wide, wet eyes, and then slowly whispered one word: "Human." It sounded like a curse. Eli sat down far away from her, near the window. He didn't say anything for a long time. He just looked outside, at the snow falling like white ash. The storm hadn't let up. The wind roared like it was angry the girl had escaped. She began to shiver again, but this time not from cold. Her lips moved. Words came out soft, scared words in her alien language. Eli didn't know the full meaning, but one sentence broke through the translator implant embedded in his ear. No cages. No chains. He turned to her slowly. She had curled up into a ball on the floor, whispering that same line again and again like a broken prayer. Eli reached into a drawer beside his bed and pulled out an old device, his personal translator. Outdated, glitchy, but it might help. He pressed the activation button and placed it on the floor between them. "I don't have chains," he said. The device repeated it in her language. She stopped whispering. He tried again. "This is my home, not a cage." Translated. Her eyes locked onto the device. She crawled forward an inch and touched it with one finger, as if it might bite her. Eli stayed still. She pointed to herself. "Lyra," she said. Then she pointed at him. "Eli," he said. Her lips moved. Lee." It was the first time she had said anything without fear. Then she whispered one more thing, slowly, almost like a test. "Are you going to sell me?" Eli's breath caught in his throat. "No," he said firmly. "Never." The translator repeated it clearly in her tongue, and this time she believed it. A little, not fully, but just enough to lower her shoulders. Just enough to finally pick up the cup, now empty, and set it upright. Eli took that as a victory. He walked to the stove, made more warm broth, and poured it gently into the cup. Then he backed away and left it on the floor, halfway between them. She stared at the cup for a long time. Then she drank. Not all of it, just a little. But it was enough. Enough to say she didn't think he was a monster anymore. That night, she didn't cry. She stayed awake most of the time, watching the fire, her silver eyes reflecting the orange glow. Eli watched her from his bed, tired but alert. Then just before dawn, she said something. He couldn't understand it. The translator had gone quiet, but the way she said it, soft, almost grateful. It felt like a whisper of peace. She lay down near the fire and closed her eyes. For the first time, she looked like she might sleep without fear. Eli didn't move. He didn't speak. He just stared at the flames and whispered, "You're safe, Lyra." And maybe, just maybe, she believed that too. Morning came slow. The storm had not passed, but the snow now fell softly, as if the sky had run out of rage. Inside the wooden hut, silence filled every corner. The fire still burned, but lower now. A soft glow danced on the walls. Eli was awake. He hadn't slept much. He had stayed up, listening to every small sound, every breath she made. Not because he was afraid she'd hurt him, no. She was too weak for that, but because she was still trapped, not in chains, but in fear. The alien girl Lyra was curled tightly near the fire. Her hands clutched the blanket like it was her last safety. Eli knew her body was still freezing deep inside. She hadn't stopped shaking. He walked slowly toward a shelf. He took down a metal box's old first aid kit. He'd used it on himself plenty of times during past jobs in war zones and mining colonies. He didn't want to scare her, but infection Could kill. Lyra, he said gently. Her eyes opened, alert and afraid. He knelt down and held up a soft cloth. Then the translator crackled. You're back. I can help clean your wounds. Her eyes widened. She pulled the blanket tighter around herself. No pain, Eli said calmly. No touching without your word. She hesitated. Then, slowly trembling, she nodded once. Eli backed up and placed a folded towel near the fire. If you're okay, sit here, he said. Lyra stood with effort. Her legs were thin, weak. She wobbled but didn't fall. She sat down on the towel, still clutching the blanket around her shoulders. Then, with slow hands, she slid it down, just enough to show her back. Eli dropped the cloth. His breath caught. There were scars, dozens of them, deep, brutal lines. Some had healed wrong. Others were fresh, red, swollen, long lashes. Burn marks. Old bruises still fading yellow and purple. It wasn't just pain. It was cruelty. Eli knelt behind her, silent. He didn't speak. He couldn't. He cleaned her wounds with gentle, careful hands, his fingers barely touching her skin. She didn't move, didn't speak. But her body was tense, waiting for something. Waiting for pain. Then it happened. As he reached for a healing patch, she suddenly screamed, a sound of panic. Not loud but broken. Her body twisted away. She grabbed the iron poker near the fire and held it out like a sword, shaking. Eli stepped back instantly. Lyra, no hurt, he said. She was breathing fast. Her eyes were wide, her whole body shaking. I didn't mean to. The translator cut him off. Her voice came sharp. Don't lie. That's how they started. First food, then words, then chains. Eli didn't move. He let the poker stay pointed at him. You're not there anymore, he said softly. This is not their place. The translator repeated his words. Lyra blinked. Her hands trembled. Her arm dropped slowly. The poker fell from her fingers with a clink. She sank to the floor, breathless. I thought I was safe, she whispered. But humans always change. Eli sat on the other side of the hut, across from her. I'm not like them, he said. I'm not part of that world. She looked up at him, eyes full of pain and doubt. Then why do you live alone on a moon no one wants? Eli was silent. He looked at the fire, thinking. Then he answered, quietly, because I've seen too much, done too much. I needed to disappear. She stared at him for a while. Then her voice broke again, softer this time. They called me beast. They whipped me when I cried. Burned me when I spoke. Eli's heart sank. Why? She looked at her hands. Because I was rare. My kind, my blood, it's valuable. My people thought I was dead. The slavers took me when I was a child. Eli clenched his fists. She looked at him again. Her next words were not angry, but tired. You say you're different. But I don't know if I can believe that. Eli nodded. You don't have to believe me yet, he said. Just stay. Just live. No chains. No cages, that's all. The translator echoed him. She didn't reply. But she didn't cry this time either. She turned back to the fire and pulled the blanket over her shoulders. She still shook, but not from fear this time. Maybe just from the memory. And maybe deep inside, a small part of her had started to believe. Not fully, but just enough. 3 days passed. The storm outside had slowed, but the silence inside the hut still felt heavy. Eli had fixed the fire, cooked simple meals, and even set up a small cot near the heater for Lyra. But she still slept on the floor closer to the door, as if ready to run. She didn't speak much. And when she did, it was in short words. Careful ones, but something was changing. Eli noticed it when she looked at him without flinching. Just for a second. He noticed it when she didn't pull her hands away as quickly. And when she finished, a whole bowl of soup without setting it aside. It wasn't trust yet, but it wasn't fear either. One afternoon, Eli sat by the table, working on an old solar panel. He didn't expect her to come near. But suddenly, he heard soft steps. He turned. Lyra stood near him. Her silver hair was no longer frozen, though still tangled. She held the translator device in both hands. "Fix?" she asked. Her voice was quiet, but steady. Eli blinked, then smiled. "You want to help me fix it?" he said. The translator cracked, repeated his words in her language. Lyra nodded. "Just once." He pushed the panel toward her. "Be careful. That wire's live." She crouched beside him. Her fingers moved with skill. She knew how to open the casing, how to lift the circuit board. "You've done this before?" he asked. She glanced at him. "Slavers made me fix tech. Punished me when it broke." "I won't punish you," he said softly. She didn't respond, but her hands kept working. Together, in silence, they repaired the panel. And when it lit up, a small green light blinking on the side, Lyra tilted her head and whispered something in her language. The translator caught it. "Still useful." Eli didn't know if she meant the machine or herself, but he nodded anyway. "You're more than useful, Lyra." Later that evening, she sat at the table across from him. A warm stew simmered between them. She tried her first question. "Why you live alone?" she asked, her words broken but clear. Eli paused. That was the first time she had asked about him. "I left my world," he said. "Too many voices, too many lies. This is quieter." She nodded slowly. "You hide?" "Yes," he admitted. "From who?" He looked into the fire. "From myself." She didn't press further. That night, something new happened. Lyra placed a hand on her chest. "Lyra," then she pointed to Eli. "You, Eli?" He smiled. "Yes." She repeated his name with better pronunciation this time. "Eli." A small mistake, but sweet. Then she reached across the table and touched the translator. "I want learn words." Eli raised his eyebrows. "You want to learn my language?" She nodded. "But—" Slowly, she added. "Of course," he said, and so it began. 1 word a day. He wrote on the wooden floor with chalk simple words: water, food, safe, cold, fire, door, sky, friend. She pointed to each, saying them carefully. He did the same with her words. They laughed the first time he messed up a sound and said something completely wrong. She covered her mouth, trying not to laugh, but the joy escaped her lips, like sunlight breaking through clouds. It was the first time he heard her laugh, and it didn't sound scared. Later, she sat near the fire, holding the chalk. She drew shapes. Her homeworld's trees, a tall tower, a sky full of moons. And then, a cage, a small one. Sharp lines. She stared at it, silent. Eli crouched beside her. "You're not in that place anymore," he said. She pointed at the drawing. "This?" "Here," she whispered, tapping her head. "Not here," he said, tapping the wooden floor. "But here," he pointed to her mind. She nodded slowly, then erased the cage with her palm. The next morning, she left something on his bed. It was her blanket neatly folded. Eli looked at her, confused. She pointed at his own bed. "You sleep. You don't want the blanket?" She shook her head, not scared now. It wasn't just a gift. It was a sign, a message louder than any words. "I feel safe." The snow had stopped falling, for the first time in a week. Light from the twin suns broke through the thick clouds above the icy moon. The beams slipped through the window cracks, falling across the wooden floor like quiet fingers. Inside the hut, Lyra stood beside the window, her eyes following the fading storm. Her silver hair now hung free, and her breathing had become calm, almost peaceful. But Eli noticed something was wrong. She hadn't spoken much that morning. Her hands kept fidgeting. Her eyes flicked toward him, then away again. She was thinking about something that made her quiet. He tried to break the silence. "You hungry?" She nodded but didn't move. Eli placed warm bread and dried meat on the table. But instead of eating, Lyra asked a question. Why do they lie about you? Eli looked up. Who? Humans, she said. Your kind. Everyone. Said you're cruel, monsters, but you gave me food, fire, warmth. Eli was silent for a moment. Lyra's voice dropped. They said humans break people. Just to see them cry. Eli took a slow breath. Some do. Are you one of them? He paused, then gave her the truth. I used to be something I'm not proud of. I fought in wars, took orders, did things that kept me alive, but left scars. Lyra sat down across from him. What kind of scars? Eli rolled up his sleeve. A deep burn mark ran down his armhole, twisted like a rope once caught fire against his skin. Someone burned you? She asked. He shook his head. I did that. Long time ago, after a mission. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat. I wanted to feel something again. So I burned myself. Lyra looked shocked. Why? He stared into the fire. Because I thought I deserved pain. The room went quiet again. Then softly Lyra said, They lied to me. Who? The slavers, the buyers, the guards. She paused. They said all humans were like hungry dogs. They said no matter how kind one acts, the bite always comes. Later, Eli sighed. That's how they control you. They make you believe there's no such thing as kindness. She nodded slowly. They told me if I ever escaped and found a human alone, I should run. Eli looked into her eyes. Why didn't you run? I did, until the cold stopped my legs. And now? He asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into the satchel she always kept near her. From inside, she pulled out a small metal chip doll, scratched, about the size of a coin. Eli recognized it immediately. It was a slave tracking implant. She placed it on the table and whispered, I cut it out myself. Eli's throat tightened. You did that alone? She nodded. It hurt. A lot. But I would rather bleed and be free than sleep in a golden cage. Eli gently picked up the chip. This means they're looking for you. She looked away. I know. You were. There's for a long time? She nodded again. Since I was a girl. I was taken when I was 5 cycles old. Do you remember your family? No, but I remember the chains. She touched her back lightly. I used to dream of freedom, she whispered. But I never imagined it would come with warm bread. And quiet, Eli smiled faintly. Quiet can be powerful. She looked at him, eyes thoughtful. Maybe they were wrong about you. Eli leaned back. Maybe they were wrong about us. But just then, there was a knock, a loud, sharp knock. Both. Froze. It came again. Knock, knock. Not wind. Not accident. Eli stood up, quiet, calm. He walked to the door and peered through the side slit. 2 figures stood outside. Covered in snow gear, not locals. Not friends. Hunters. Lyra single quotes. S face went pale. She backed away, nearly dropping her cup. Is it them? She asked. Eli nodded once. Stay behind me, he said. He opened a hidden compartment under the floor. Pulled out a rifle, old but powerful. Lyra's voice trembled. You'll give me to them? He looked her dead in the eye. No. But, I told you, he said. You're not going back in chains. She stared at him, breath held. Then she whispered. Then. You're not the man they warned me about. No, Eli said, loading the rifle. I'm worse. And this time, it was the monsters outside who should be afraid. Asterisk, the knock came again. Louder. Then silence. Eli stood with the rifle in his hands, his eyes fixed on the door. His breath was slow, his body still. Years of training returned to his muscles like old ghosts waking up. Lyra sat frozen near the fireplace. She didn't speak. Her hands clenched the fabric of her coat. Her ears twitched at every small sound. Then voices. Outside. Faint. Muffled through the wooden wall, but clear enough. We know she's in there. Another voice, deeper, colder. Open the door, human. Or we burn the place down. Ayla didn't answer. He reached behind a shelf and pulled out a metal switch. He flipped it. A red light blinked under the floor. A homemade defense system. Lyra whispered, "You built traps?" "No," Eli replied. "I built warnings." Outside, footsteps crunched in the snow. Eli raised the translator toward the door. He pressed the speaker. "She's not your property," he said firmly. "Turn back now." The response came quickly. "You think you can protect her? You're one man, one hut. You won't last 10 seconds. Eli turned to Lyra. "Get to the back room. Lock the door. Don't open it unless it's my voice." She didn't move. "Go, Lyra." Her legs shook, but she obeyed. She crawled behind the curtain and shut the wooden divider. Heart pounding in her chest. Eli turned off the safety on the rifle. A shadow passed the window. Then dash boom, an explosion. Hit the front wall. The door cracked inward, smoke rushing in. A flash grenade. Not military grade, but enough to blind and disorient. Eli didn't panic. He moved through the smoke like it was air. 2 figures entered, tall, masked, dressed in black with glowing red goggles. The first one raised a stun baton. 2. Slow. Eli fired. A direct hit to the leg. The man screamed and dropped. The second lunged, but Eli ducked, using the butt of the rifle to slam into his ribs. The attacker crumpled. Outside, more footsteps. Eli dragged the injured bodies behind the wall. He moved quickly, closing metal panels he had hidden in the floor makeshift shields. Then he whispered into the old communicator on his wrist. "Code red. Tracker. Retrieval team. Unauthorized landing." It was a bluff. No one would hear it, but the invaders didn't know that. Through the smoke, another voice shouted, "She's our property. You're harboring stolen merchandise." Eli growled back, "You want her? Come and bleed for her." A plasma bolt struck the outer wall, burned right through the wooden beam. Then another, closer. The hut shook. Lyra could hear everything. The yells, the gunfire, the thudding footsteps. But worst of all, she heard Eli grunt, a sound of pain. She wanted to scream, but covered her mouth instead. She remembered every cage, every time she cried and no one came. But this time, someone was fighting for her, and he might die because of it. Outside, Eli was bleeding from a graze on his shoulder. He pulled a metal canister from under the table, yanked the pin, and rolled it toward the door. Bang! A flash of white light and thunder shook the front room. Screams followed. When the smoke cleared, only one man remained standing. He wore better armor, a gold stripe down his chest, the commander. He walked in slowly, calm and cocky. Eli aimed, but the man spoke first. "You think you're some hero, old man?" "No," Eli said. "I'm just the last mistake you'll ever make." The commander smiled and raised his weapon. But before he could fire, Lyra appeared behind him, quiet as shadow. She held a metal rod from the fire stove. And with all her strength, she slammed it into the back of the man's head. He dropped instantly. Eli turned. Stunned. Lyra stood over the body, shaking, but not from fear, from rage. "I'm not running anymore," she said. Eli lowered his rifle. "Good," he said softly, "because they just learned what happens when they push too far." Outside, 2 more attackers ran. They had seen enough. The snow was red where they stepped. The hut was damaged, but still standing. Inside, Lyra helped Eli bandage his arm. Her hands were firm. "No longer afraid. You didn't have to fight." She said, "Yes," he replied. "I did. Why?" "Because you're not cargo. You're not a price tag. You're not theirs." Lyra looked into his eyes. For the first time, she didn't see a human. She saw a shield, a home, a future. In her heart, something warm began to grow. Not fear, not shame, but trust. The wind had stopped. For the first time in days, there was no storm, no knocking at the door, no voices yelling from outside. Just silence. And peace. The sun, small and pale in the sky, peeked through the clouds. Light touched the snow-covered land like it was blessing it. The air was still cold, but the sky was clear. Inside the damaged hut, Eli sat by the fire, his arm bandaged, his face calm but tired. He stirred a pot of stew. Lyra sat across from him, adding wood to the flames. No chains, no fear. Just two people. Surviving. Together. The floor was still stained with blood in places. The door was cracked and burned. Tools were scattered from the fight. But neither of them cared. Lyra looked at Eli. "You need rest," she said gently. He smiled. "Not until you eat." She smiled back, a real one this time. The kind that came from deep inside, not forced or afraid. She took the bowl he offered. Her hands were steady. Her eyes, no longer filled with panic, were clear and strong. They ate quietly. No one spoke about what happened. They didn't need to. After breakfast, Lyra stepped outside. The snow was thick, but soft under her feet. She looked around the white land, endless hills, broken trees, smoke rising in the far distance where a ship had crashed. The slavers wouldn't be back. Not soon. Not after what they'd lost. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the old tracking chip. Eli joined her outside. She looked at him, then tossed the chip into the snow. "Buried," she said. "Gone." Eli watched it disappear beneath the ice. Then, out of the sky, a sound, a humming. A ship. Not large. Not a warship. A rescue shuttle. Probably picked up the emergency signal Eli had sent from his old communicator. Even if it was a bluff, the signal had reached someone. The shuttle landed gently on a flat patch of snow. The door opened. A man in a white uniform stepped out, human, friendly. He raised a hand. "Eli, you're alive." Eli nodded. "Barely." The man's eyes moved to Lyra. "She with you?" "Yes," Eli replied. The officer walked closer. "We picked up reports. Slave transport crash. Escaped property. She's not listed as legal." Lyra stiffened, but Eli didn't flinch. "She's free now," he said. The officer looked uncertain. "We could take her to the station. Get her processed. Registered." "She's not going with you," Eli said firmly. The man looked at Lyra. "What do you want?" Lyra stepped forward. She took Eli's hand. "I stay," she said simply. The officer hesitated, then smiled. "All right. We'll list her as protected civilian under your care. But you'll need to submit a formal report." "I will," Ilele replied. The officer handed him a data pad, then returned to the shuttle. Before leaving, he looked back. "You always find trouble in strange places, Eli." Eli chuckled. "I don't find trouble. Trouble finds me." The ship lifted off and vanished into the sky. Lyra turned to Eli. "You didn't have to protect me." "I didn't have to," he said. "I wanted to." "Why?" He looked into her eyes. "Because when I found you, you were broken, but still strong. Afraid, but still standing. I saw myself in you, and I knew if I let you fall, I'd fall too." Lyra's eyes filled with tears, but not the kind she used to cry. These were different. She stepped forward, placed her hand over his heart. "I'm not afraid anymore." Eli nodded. "You never have to be." They walked back into the hut. The place needed repair. A new door, clean floors, maybe another bed, but it was still standing. So were they. That night, they sat by the fire again. Eli read from an old book. Lyra listened, practicing the new words softly. Sky, safe, family, stay. Eli closed the book. "You know what the last word means?" Lyra nodded. She pointed to herself. "I stay." Then she pointed to him. "You. Home." He didn't correct her, because she was right. He was her home now, and maybe she was his too. Outside, the stars stretched across the sky, clear and endless. But inside, under the old wooden roof, something brighter was being built, not with bricks, but with trust.